She said, "I'm keeping my last name for my career. It's a feminist issue." I replied, "I completely support that." I then insisted we sign a prenup to keep our finances separate to support her independence. She discovered how important my last name was when she realized she had no legal claim to the wealth associated with it.
Hi viewers, thanks for stopping by. If you've been watching the channel for a while and still haven't subscribed, now's a great time. Let's get into the story.
It's often said that a person's name is their most valuable possession. I never thought much about it. To me, my last name was just a word, a label I'd had since birth. It was my fiancée Amelia who taught me its true value. She did so by refusing to take it, and in doing so, inadvertently saved me and my family from the greatest hostile takeover I've ever witnessed. This all happened about a year ago, and it's taken me this long to untangle the whole mess and see it for the masterclass in irony that it truly was. To understand the story, you have to understand my family. My last name isn't famous in the way Rockefeller or Vanderbilt is, but in certain circles, it carries a significant weight. My great-grandfather started a manufacturing business in the 1930s that, through a combination of hard work and sheer luck, grew into a quiet empire. We are what people politely call old money. It's not a world of flashy cars and reality shows. It's a world of trusts, board meetings, philanthropic foundations, and a crushing sense of responsibility to not be the generation that screws it all up. I've always had a complicated relationship with my family's wealth. I love them, and I'm grateful for the opportunities I've had, but I've spent my entire life trying to prove that I am more than just my last name. I didn't go into the family business. I became an art historian, a profession my grandfather once lovingly referred to as the most expensive hobby a man can have. I live a relatively modest life. I have a good job as a curator at a city museum, I drive a sensible car, and I live in an apartment that is nice, but not opulent. I wanted a partner who would fall in love with me, the slightly nerdy art historian, not with the balance sheet of my family's trust fund. Then I met Amelia. We met at a university fundraising event. She was brilliant, sharp, and funny. She was a corporate lawyer on the partner track at a major firm, and she was fiercely ambitious. She had this incredible drive that I found captivating. For the first 6 months of our relationship, she had no idea about my family's background. She knew I came from a comfortable family, but she had no concept of the scale. I loved that. She was with me for me. The slow reveal began about a year into our relationship when I first took her to my family's estate for Christmas. The estate is a sprawling, beautiful old property that has been in the family for a century. It's home. To her, I think it looked like a set from a period drama. I watched her as we walked through the door. I saw the change in her eyes, the quick, almost imperceptible widening as she took in the scale of the place, the art on the walls, the quiet, understated elegance of it all. Over the next year, I noticed subtle shifts in her. Her ambition, which I had once admired for its focus on her own career, began to expand. She started asking more questions about the family business, about the foundation, about the trust my great-grandfather had set up. She started dressing differently, her style evolving from sharp and professional to quietly luxurious. She began to see our life not as something we were building together, but as a launchpad. The woman I fell in love with, the one who was so proud of her own achievements, was slowly being replaced by someone who was calculating her potential inheritance. But I loved her. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself that she was just trying to understand my world. So after 3 years together, I proposed. I did it on a trip to Florence, a city I adore. It was romantic, it was heartfelt, and she said yes. I was, for a little while, incredibly happy. The planning for the wedding began, and with it, the first major crack in our foundation appeared. We were at a cafe, discussing invitations, when she brought it up. "I've been thinking," she said, setting down her coffee cup. "I'm not going to take your last name." I was a little taken aback, but not entirely shocked. "Oh, okay, can I ask why?" "It's a feminist issue, obviously," she said, as if it were the most self-evident thing in the world. "I've worked my entire life to build a name for myself in the legal world. My career is my brand. Taking your name would dilute that. It's an outdated patriarchal tradition, and I think we're more evolved than that." I listened, and in my head, I translated. She didn't want to be Mrs. Ethan Sterling. She wanted to be Amelia Hart, Esquire, who just happened to be married to a Sterling. She wanted to maintain her independent brand while enjoying all the benefits of being associated with mine. She wanted to be a franchisee, not a co-owner. My disappointment was profound. It wasn't about the name itself. I'm not that traditional. It was about what it symbolized. She saw our marriage not as a merger of two lives, but as a strategic alliance where she would retain full autonomy while gaining access to my resources. A thought, cold and clear, formed in my mind, a response born from her own logic. "You are absolutely right," I said, and her face relaxed into a smug smile. "I completely support that. Your independence is one of the things I love most about you. You've worked incredibly hard to get where you are, and you should protect that." "I'm so glad you understand," she said. "I do," I continued, leaning forward. "And I think we should take it a step further. If we're going to have a truly modern, evolved partnership, one that respects your independence, then we should formalize it. We should get a prenuptial agreement." Her smile flickered for a fraction of a second. "A prenup? Isn't that a little unromantic?" "Is it any less romantic than refusing to share a last name?" I countered gently. "I think it's the ultimate act of respect. It's a legal document that says, I honor your independence and your career so much that I want to protect it legally. It will keep our finances completely separate. What's yours is yours, what's mine is mine. It's the perfect way to support the very principles you're talking about." She couldn't argue. I had used her own progressive feminist rhetoric and turned it into a perfectly logical next step. To argue against the prenup would be to admit that her argument about the name wasn't about feminism at all. It was about something else entirely. She was trapped. "Okay," she said slowly, "if you think it's that important." The next few weeks were a fascinating exercise in legal maneuvering. We each hired lawyers. Hers was a shark, a woman known for her aggressive tactics in high-stakes divorces. Mine was my family's lawyer, a quiet, methodical man named Mr. Davies, who has been handling our family's affairs since before I was born. Amelia's focus during the negotiations was entirely on protecting her future earnings and her existing assets. Her lawyer fought for every clause that would ensure her income as a partner at her firm would be solely hers. They were so focused on building a wall around her career that they barely paid attention to the clauses Mr. Davies was drafting on my side. His terms were simple, elegant, and ironclad. The prenup stipulated that all assets, properties, trusts, inheritances, and any other financial instruments associated with my family and the Sterling name were my sole and separate property, now and forever, not subject to division under any circumstances. It was a fortress. Amelia read it and signed it without a single objection. She saw it as a victory. She had protected her brand. She felt incredibly clever and modern, a feminist icon striking a blow against the patriarchy. She had no idea that she had just signed a document legally disinheriting herself from the very empire she was planning to conquer. With the prenup signed, her behavior became bolder. The subtle shifts were replaced by overt planning. She started talking about our future. Not in our apartment, but at the family estate. "You know, the West Wing gets such beautiful morning light," she said one day. "I have some incredible ideas for a renovation." It wasn't her wing to renovate. She started dropping my family name in conversations with her colleagues. She began positioning herself as the future matriarch of a dynasty she had legally firewalled herself from. The final, unforgivable betrayal came about a month before the wedding. I came home early from work one day. She was in our home office on a video call, her back to the door. She was speaking in her sharp, corporate lawyer voice. She didn't hear me come in. "And that's why my immediate priority upon marriage will be to secure a seat on the foundation's executive board," she was saying. "Their current philanthropic strategy is archaic. With my legal background and my position as Ethan's wife, I believe I can enact significant changes to the bylaws and redirect their capital towards more modern, high-impact ventures." I just stood in the doorway, frozen. She wasn't just planning on spending my family's money. She was planning a strategic, corporate-style takeover of my great-grandfather's legacy. She was talking about my family's charitable foundation, a foundation dedicated to funding libraries and local hospitals, as if it were a struggling company she was about to acquire. And she was going to use her status as my wife as her leverage. I quietly backed out of the room. The hurt was gone, replaced by a feeling of profound and utter disgust. The woman I was about to marry was a corporate raider, and my family was her target. That night I confronted her. I told her I'd overheard her call. She didn't even try to deny it. She tried to reframe it. "I'm trying to help, Ethan," she said, her voice full of condescending patience. "Your family is wonderful, but they're stuck in the past. I can bring a modern perspective. I can make that foundation a real global player." "It's not your foundation to change," I said, "and it's not your name to leverage. It will be when I'm your wife," she said, her frustration finally showing. "No," I said, my voice quiet and final. "It won't be. The wedding is off." The meltdown was instantaneous. The calm, evolved corporate lawyer was replaced by a screaming, furious stranger. She told me I was throwing away the best thing that ever happened to me. She told me I would regret this. The next day, her lawyer called my lawyer. She was contesting the breakup, claiming she was entitled to damages for the canceled wedding and for the implied promise of our future together. Mr. Davies, my lawyer, let her lawyer finish his rant. Then he said, "Please direct your client to Article 4, Section B, subsection C of the prenuptial agreement that she signed 3 months ago. The clause explicitly states that in the event of the dissolution of the engagement for any reason, both parties agree to walk away with their separate assets as defined within the document and forfeit any and all other claims." There was a long silence on the other end of the phone. Amelia had been so focused on protecting her future that she hadn't considered the present. That was the last I heard from her lawyers. I did, however, get one final, frantic voicemail from Amelia herself. She was crying. "I don't understand, Ethan. I was doing this for us. I was going to make your family's legacy even bigger." She still didn't get it. She never would. She thought the wealth was the prize. She didn't understand that the trust, the respect, the shared life, that was the real fortune. Her feminism was a brand. Her independence was a strategy. Her love was a business deal. She was a brilliant lawyer who had negotiated the worst deal of her life. She had refused to take my last name to maintain her own career brand. But it was that name, the one she didn't want, that was the only key to the kingdom she was so desperate to rule. The prenup she had so eagerly signed to prove her independence was the very document that guaranteed she would walk away with nothing but that independence. It's the most perfect, airtight, and deserved irony I can imagine. I've learned a lot this past year. But the most important lesson is this: when someone shows you who they are, believe them. And always, always get it in writing.